Hi, my name is Mulan, and this is a video designed to give you an overview of the Dogon tribe of Mali. Some of the things I will be talking about are how they dress, their art, and spiritual beliefs. I will try to cover as much as I can, and I hope that by the end of this video, your understanding of this culture will increase, which in turn should make you wonder what makes a culture rich, regardless of their material possessions, which is prevalent in most Western countries. Dress. The men wear either an African kimono or agbada, usually colored brown, indigo, or white. Women wear indigo-dyed clothing, commonly referred as female agbada, as well as sometimes nothing to cover their chest. Kids will often wear what adults wear, aside from traditional clothing, and sometimes they'll actually not wear anything at all. Race and ethnicity. 4 ethnic groups in Mali make up 50% of its population, which are the Mande, the Bambara, the Malink, and the Sarakole. The Dogon are said to have been the first people to settle in Mali, though it has been said that 700 years ago, the Telem, Aboriginal Pygmies, were living there, but little is known as to how they disappeared. Some speculate that they must have probably bred with the Dogon. The Dogon have survived thanks to their villages being located in the Hombori Cliffs and Badiagara Escarpment, which made them quite an isolated people. Today some of them live on the plain terrain since they are not in a state of war or defense. Black is the racial majority of people in the Dogon area of Mali, and the Dogon have kept many ancient and ceremonial artifacts which has helped them gain merit and acclaim compared to other African tribes. Gender. The Dogon value gender equality. Homosexuality is not frowned upon, and it's quite accepted, whereas in most African countries, it's illegal. Although this equality does not always apply. For example, men are allowed to own land while women aren't. And also, some men view women as inferior, which can also cause problems. But in general, women are well respected, since they're great contributors, selling mainly food items and a few manufactured goods. The following wooden sculpture of a seated couple further reinforces the equality of genders that the Dogon tribe tried to emphasize in their society. Since around the time this was sculpted, gender equality was a necessity to the Dogon tribe, since there was a high infant mortality rate during that period. Religion. The Dogon believe in worshipping ancestors, spirits, and supernatural beings. Their supreme creator god, Amma, is the master of life and death. He is benevolent and also an impersonal being who prevails over all, sees all, and knows all. They say he is responsible for the creation of 3 other subordinate beings, and their worship forms the basis of several Dogon cults. These 3 beings are Nomo, who is considered a water spirit, Lebe, who is the incarnation of the earth and its fertilizing properties, and Urugu, the mythical representative of fallen men. The 3 main cults in the Dogon tribe are Awa, cult of the dead, Lebe, which is a cult based around the earth god and agriculture, and Binu, which is a totemic cult. Firstly, Awa, cult of the dead, has the purpose to reorder the spiritual forces disturbed by the death of Nomo, a mythological ancestor of great importance to the Dogon. Members of the Awa cult dance with ornate carved and painted masks during both funeral and death anniversary ceremonies. The primary purpose of the Awa dance ceremonies is to lead souls of the deceased to their final resting place in the family altars and to consecrate their passage to the ranks of their ancestors. The Lebe cult of the earth god Lebe, is primarily concerned with the agricultural cycle, and its chief priest is called a Dogon. All Dogon villages have a Lebe shrine whose altars have bits of earth incorporated into them to encourage the continued fertility of the land. Finally, the Benu cult is a totemic cult that has complex associations with the Dogon's sacred places used for ancestor worship, spirit communication, and agricultural sacrifices. Most of the major Dogon sacred sites were related to episodes in the Dogon myth of creation of the world, in particular to a deity named Nomo. Benu shrines house spirits of mythic ancestors who lived in the legendary era before the appearance of death among mankind. Benu spirits often make themselves known to their descendants in the form of an animal that interceded on behalf of the clan during its founding or migration, thus becoming the clan's totem. So, the Dogon are mainly animists, which is the belief in a supernatural power that organizes and animates the material universe. A small minority of Dogon peoples are Christians and some are Muslim. Their traditional religion tends to be a little more lenient and open to Islamic tenets and beliefs, after years and years of having more and more Muslims integrate into their communities. Family. The household in the Dogon tribe is usually an extended family consisting of both nuclear and polygynous parts. The authority of the household unit is vested in the father, who controls both the economic and ceremonial functions of the family. The father also demands unquestioning obedience from his offsprings. Polygamy is permitted, though monogamy rules the norm for marriages, since most men only have one wife. Families are tied to specific religious and spiritual groups, which have different responsibilities and spheres of Dogon life. No ceremony marks the beginning of a Dogon marriage. The only public ceremony occurs when all the new husbands publicly thank their fathers-in-law for their wives in a festival called Buro, which is a yearly rite. The wife only becomes part of her husband's life after the birth of their first child. Until then, she has an option to leave her husband. Divorces are quite rare after the first birth. Children are free and very independent and aren't overly controlled, having the freedom to wander around a lot. The death of an infant will not gain as much attention as the death of an adult, unfortunately. That's not to say that a mother won't be devastated by the death of her child, it's just that the rest of the community may not pay much attention to this occurrence. Because of this attitude, children are very independent and look out for each other. Recreation. The main sport played throughout the Dogon region is football, commonly referred as soccer in the Western world. The main form of entertainment for the Dogon people is dance, which also plays an important role in rituals, ceremonies, and celebrations, especially religious ones, which occur on a regular basis in all villages. There are 78 different types of ritual masks among the Dogon, and all have symbolic meaning. Some represent constellations, and some other beings from outer space. Ritual storytelling is the main area of focus in their dance, with each mask having symbolic meaning and telling a story. During a funeral, the dancers can dance on the deceased rooftops, and sometimes there are mock battles with the spirits who come to disturb the proceedings. All members of the village participate as active listeners and viewers of these dances. Language. The two main languages spoken by the Dogon people are Jamse and Toroso. Jamse is said to be the original Dogon language, but tiny distinctions that vary from village to village are also recognized. Dialects for those that live in the plains and those that live near the cliffside are different. Also, there is an extensive sign language system to accommodate the deaf. English-speaking travelers have to rely on tour guides that speak English, since in the entire region no one speaks English, though French is quite common. So knowing French is essential when visiting, unless traveling with one of the few guides who do speak English. Education. Due to their poverty and isolation, the Dogon receive very minimal funding for their schools. In many villages, there is no government school at all, which forces local children to walk very long distances to receive a basic education. In some cases, community schools have been established, but as can be expected, such schools have very little in terms of funding and/or supplies. Dogon villages have become popular with tourists, some of whom have started local non-governmental organizations to help the Dogon build schools. So tourism has helped to improve the standard of living of the Dogon people. Homes and transportation. Traditional Dogon architecture can be seen throughout the Dogon villages and consists of a series of unique and exceptional mud buildings. The Dogon live in huts made out of mud that dry really fast because the region is hot and dry. Stone is quite scarce in the region, which is why the Dogon developed a style of mud architecture wholly on their own. Houses on the cliffside are hard to reach since these houses were strategically built there for protection against hostile neighbors and wild animals. The vast majority of the population lives in the plains though, below the escarpment in more recently constructed villages, but the old homes remain and are taken care of and are in excellent shape. There are almost no roads in the region, except those connecting a couple of towns used as base camps with neighboring regions. The Dogon people walk to move around and visit people from neighboring villages. Women often walk with piles of goods on their heads. The Dogon people walk trails in sandals, but it is not uncommon for them, especially kids, to walk barefooted. Art, literature, and music. The Dogon tribe's main art form is sculpture. For centuries, they have created beautiful abstract wooden sculptures. These sculptures are some of the oldest surviving wooden sculptures in the world. Some have dated to well over 1500 years. The Dogon religion was created in the Noro culture, and its symbolism is connected through a circular pattern with no beginning nor end. The Dogon are quite unorthodox, since most written literature is presented in a chronological fashion with a beginning and an end. This circular structure is found at the core of their mythology and is a symbolism of immortality. Since the Dogon tribe was isolated, living in the high cliffs of the region, their mythology survived and remains in its purest state. Dogon music is diverse and varied. It is closely associated with various rituals, such as weddings, funerals, the first rains, and the start of millet season. Cultural issues. The main cultural issues that the Dogon tribe have are those related to religion, namely, the incorporation of Islam and Christianity in their traditional belief systems. It's only after a series of holy wars in the 19th century that Islam definitely took root in rural zones in the Dogon region. The Dogon have adapted to the spread of Islam throughout Africa, so some tenets of Islam are accepted, while others are rejected. In some cases, some elements are blended and mixed with those of traditional religion. For the Dogon, Christianity provides an alternative supernatural power that is not as costly as the animal sacrifice prevalent in their traditional religion. Even though the popularity of Christianity and Islam has increased throughout the Dogon region, many have resisted its rise and have firmly held their beliefs in magic and traditional practices. People living in different villages have all been affected by the attraction of economic opportunities abroad. When a young man comes of age, he leaves his village to make some money in the city, and later returns with money and goods. Economy. For Westerners, the Dogon people are poor, but they are quite rich culturally speaking, having preserved their most significant beliefs and traditional customs and practices. The Dogon are primarily agriculturalists, their principal crops being millet, sorghum, rice, onions, beans, tobacco, and sorrel. The Dogon people grow onions, which are exported throughout the Sudan region. They also grow millet and sorghum, which is consumed locally. Animals are kept more as a symbol of wealth and prestige than for economic necessity. The principal domestic animals are sheep, goats, donkeys, dogs, and chickens. A few villages also keep bees. Craft skills are well developed among the Dogon, especially the making of pottery and baskets, weaving, wood carving, and leather. Selling arts and crafts is very common for them. Government. In Dogon society, the Hagan is the chief priest. He is in charge of all religious rituals that are said to guarantee sufficient future crops and by extension to ensure the perpetuation of his people. The Hagan also has judicial responsibilities. He is the oldest man in the village, and he must observe many taboos. Once enthroned, the Hagan no longer has the right to have physical contact with anyone. Hagan live alone and should be celibate, but a village girl may act as a maid. Festivals and important dates. The principal ceremonies and festivals of the Dogon center around agriculture and death. The Bulo festival, which happens every year between May and June, is a time where the Dogon people celebrate the Animist New Year, or Bulo. The Bulo is an agrarian festival that launches the beginning of the rainy season and millet cultivation. This celebration is characterized by masked dances, traditional ceremonies, and overflowing canaries and millet beer. During the month of February to April, there are various funeral ceremonies commemorating the ancestors, as well as serving as an offering to them. Another extraordinary event of the Dogon people is the Siji festival. It is their most important animist ritual, celebrated every 60 years. Given the Dogon beliefs about the world's origins, it has been considered to coincide with the apparition of the Sirius B star, or dog star, and the next Siji is anticipated for the year 2027. Food. The Dogon grow and eat millet and sorghum, both of which are cereal grains. These grains are often boiled in water or crushed before they are consumed. The Dogon also eat rice and beans regularly. They cultivate shallots, onions, peanuts, and some other vegetables. Their economy relies much on the selling of onions and shallots. Shallots are a kind of red onion that resemble garlic. They also raise sheep, goats, and chickens. These are consumed only on special occasions. Astronomy. So what actually got me interested in and prompted me to choose this culture the Dogon culture, was their extensive knowledge of astronomy. Most of the knowledge in Africa and way of life is viewed as primitive, according to the Western world, but this culture proves that nothing could be further from the truth with the knowledge that they possess of astronomy. Sirius is the brightest star in the sky, and had a prominent place in many ancient cultures. Sirius, which is about 8.7 light years from Earth, has a white dwarf companion star called Sirius B. Sirius B cannot be seen with the naked eye, and astronomers first guessed at its existence in the 1830s. They mathematically developed a theoretical model of its orbit around Sirius, now referred to as Sirius A, later in the 19th century. The Dogon are also said to have understood that Earth and other planets rotate on their axis, that they orbit the Sun, that Jupiter has 4 moons, and that Saturn has rings around it, all of which can't be seen without powerful telescopes, which they did not possess. So now the question that remains is how did this so-called primitive culture, primitive tribe, how did they obtain such accurate information? Well, that's still up for debate. There's some theories ranging from extraterrestrials to Westerners claiming that they were visited by European astronomers in the 18th century. My own conclusion is that credit should be given where it's due.